Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag how I got custody. This is one of the most important videos I'll ever do because I'm going to show you some science that backs up what I tell you guys all the time. If you don't get this down and you don't start thinking like this, you're going to lose, and you're going to forever lose going to court. I've told you before over and over, you got to go to court despite the pain, despite the suffering, despite the bias, despite corrupt judges. You know, the system's corrupt. Fight anyway. It's hard. Fight anyway. The judges don't like me. My attorney's selling me out. The guardian litem's fighting me. Everybody's against me. I'm losing friends. Fight anyway. Your life with your kid is at stake. And at the other end of that tunnel, the analogy I give is it's like an Indiana Jones movie. You know, Indiana Jones was always looking for a treasure, and he went through tunnels and traps, booby traps, you know, murderers, killers, thugs, places with snakes, which were his nemesis. That was his biggest fear. And, you know, people trying to kill him, hurt him, whatever. It's like an Indiana Jones movie, and there's a dark tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, you can see a little bit of light, and your kid is standing there. Are you going to go through it or not? So here's some science that says when people do stuff that they don't want to do, part of your brain grows. And people who are obese or who struggle, have depression or whatever, I forget exactly what he says, but I'll show you the video. They have a smaller one, and people that die earlier have a smaller one. The way you grow in life or do anything in life or accomplish stuff, every successful person, every CEO, anybody who's famous and rich said, when there was a chance for me to quit, I kept going, or I tried another way. And a lot of you guys that watch my videos, you've tried stuff, and I say, here's a way that works, and you can't believe it because in your mind, you'd rather just say, well, I already tried. I don't want to try again. I don't want to do something that I don't feel like doing. Your mommy and daddy told you ever since you were a kid, taught you to do stuff that you didn't feel like doing, cleaning your room, doing this and that. The more you do that, the more you build invincibility. If somebody comes after you and they can't defeat you, or you keep coming back. And again, a lot of this is the war of attrition. You don't even necessarily have to win in court to end up winning in the end, because 95% of court cases settle out of court. It's whoever endures the longest. So let me show you this science, and then I'll make a couple comments at the end.
Most people don't know this, but there's a brain structure called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. But what's interesting about this brain area is there are now a lot of data showing that when people do something they don't want to do, like add 3 hours of exercise, or when people who are trying to diet and lose weight resist eating something. When people do anything that they, and this is the important part, that they don't want to do.
Right.
It's not about adding more work, it's about adding more work that you don't want to do.
Yes.
This brain area gets bigger. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex is smaller in obese people. It gets bigger when they diet. It's larger in athletes. It's especially large, or grows larger, in people that see themselves as challenged and overcome some challenge. And in people that live a very long time, this area keeps its size. Anyways, scientists are starting to think of the anterior mid-cingulate cortex not just as one of the seats of willpower,
Right.
but perhaps actually the seat of the will to live.
So there's some science for you. Now, whether you believe that or not, and want to be in denial that you have to just do stuff that you don't want to do to build your brain, it's actually just like something like lifting weights or exercise. You want to start getting in shape, you have to walk up some stairs or walk up a hill or just go for a walk. And it hurts at first and it's uncomfortable. But the people who succeed at stuff like that, or getting a law degree or going to med school, a lot of people quit that stuff because they don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to do something that they don't feel like doing. The people with discipline, you know, Mike Tyson said that discipline is doing something you hate like you love it. Like you just do it anyway because you're thinking the long-term goal. If I go through this, I'm going to get in shape. If I go through this, I'm going to feel better. If I go through this, I'm going to be healthier. If I go through this, I'll get my degree. If I go through this, I'll get the job. Once you start making up your mind, I'm going to go to court and it's going to suck and you know it's coming, It's easier to deal with it. Like, let's say, some people who like take ice baths, who are pro athletes, or somebody who's doing it for cold therapy or whatever. When you get in, that's uncomfortable. When you make up your mind, I'm about to be in pain or discomfort, and I'm just going to fight through it. It's easier to deal with than it's like, I don't like the comfort. I like to be snuggled in a blanket and under my warm sheets and be comfortable. Then you're going to be tormented and not going to handle it. When I went through my custody battle, I was blindsided. I suffered the same trauma you did, and I got a bunch of narcissistic, egomaniac, selfish fools with no self-awareness that say, "Oh, I'm suffering more than anybody else could possibly suffer." First of all, you're full of ish. You have a megalomaniac audacity to crap on people who've been imprisoned for falsely being accused of molestation and falsely being accused of domestic violence and going to jail or prison. Okay, if you haven't endured that, you haven't endured the worst. Now, that's not to say what you're enduring isn't torment. But the fact that, I have haters who say, you don't understand what I'm going through, you're just a jerk, James. No, I realize what you're going through, and I realize the only answer, if you actually want to get access to your kids, is to grow some balls and fight despite the pain. If you cannot get this, you're a loser. There's only winners and losers in this. And you will lose your kids, and you will lose out on this because you're the one who had a kid with a crazy woman. You're in this predicament because you didn't think right. Now, some of you got suckered and bamboozled and really fell in love with somebody that put on a show, or they lost their mind and they turned into somebody else or whatever. But some of you had plenty of signs. And I've had 2 relationships in my life where I had plenty of signs. One of them was a little harder to detect than the other, but I should have known better. If I would have stuck with my conscience, I wouldn't have messed around. So it's my fault. And so I brought a child in this world. And for me to give up like a punk and say, well, I'll just wait until my kid's older, like these sovereign nation folks do. Well, fight the system. We need to fight the system now. Sacrifice your kids, figure them out later. Those guys are batting 0 for 1,000,000, 0 for 1,000. Their shooting percentage is 0. I've never seen somebody like that win anything with that stuff. But I've seen since 2001, whatever year this is, since 2001, do the math. Right now, it's been 23 years. I've seen over and over and over and over guys talking about fighting the system and overcoming the system and changing laws and doing this and that. The system, we have not scratched a dent in the system since it started to become biased against men. For 60 years, men have been saying, change the system, change the system, change the system. I've seen fathers' rights groups go to the legislature and work their ass off to get to a point where they get one little thing in the law changed and everything's still exactly the same. But you have to make up your mind, I'm going to go anyway. War is hell. I'm going to war to knock this out and get it over with so I'll live in peace later. A lot of you want peace right now and you live in hell later. Make up your mind.